Hi, everyone. I'm Lakeisha Ikigwe, and it is my pleasure to interview Tracy Jordan Roberts and Lisa Diaz. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about their background and expertise in the field of estate planning. So, Tracy Jordan Roberts is an estate planning attorney in Southern California with over 20 years of experience. She is a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, and is a UCLA School of Law graduate. After working for several preeminent estate planning law firms throughout the years, Tracy has recently opened her own firm as a sole practitioner, the law offices of Tracy J. Roberts. In her spare time, she is the president of the Orange County SPCA and is passionate about helping animals. Lisa Diaz is an estate planning paralegal with over 25 years of experience. In addition to raising a family, Lisa is involved in helping veterans and military families since she is married to a Navy pilot and has seen firsthand the struggles of veterans and military families. Lisa and Tracy have worked together at 3 different law firms over the years and are now on this new venture together. So welcome, Tracy and Lisa. And just so you all know, I have known Tracy for 12 years. Tracy and I worked together at a firm 12 years ago and have remained friends. And I have been thrilled to see her open her new law office. And I cannot state enough how much I highly recommend Tracy and Lisa to support you or anyone you know with their estate planning needs. So I want to get started. Tracy, tell us a little bit about why estate planning is such an important part of an overall sort of life plan. And one thing in particular that I would like for you to touch on is explaining the difference between estate planning and financial planning. And again, how this fits in an individual's overall sort of life plan.
Well, there is a difference between estate planning and financial planning. When we are planning someone's estate, we are planning for the event of their incapacity, the event of their death, and who is going to step in the event of incapacity and start, managing their assets on a daily basis. Basically, who's going to take care of you, who's going to make your medical decisions, but not who is, what are you specifically going to invest in? It is really who's going to pay the bills, who's going to, make sure that your financial planner who is specifically investing your money, they're overseeing that, but they're not, the financial planner is just one component of your estate plan. And then on your death, who are you going to leave your money to? Who do you want to take care of? And how are you going to accomplish that? Is it going to be through a will, through a trust? In California, you probably need both. So we're talking about estate planning, wills and trusts, and, how are you going to take care of yourself and your family if you can't make those decisions for yourself, either due to incapacity or on your death.
So one of the main goals of this particular seminar this webinar that we're doing today is the essentials of estate planning for women. And there are some very key reasons why you feel like women absolutely must give this matter high priority in their lives. So can you dive a little bit deeply into that?
Well, there's 2 things. First of all, women generally live longer than men.
Yay.
So if you're married or if you are single, if you're a female, you're probably going to outlive the people in your lives that are, you know, there to support you,
Mm.
whether it be financially or just on a day-to-day basis, you know, helping make decisions. So it's essential for a woman to have their estate plan in place so that if they get to that point where they can't make decisions for themselves anymore, who is going to do that? You know, the natural thought is if you're married, your spouse is going to do that. But more than likely, a woman is going to outlive her husband.
Mm-hmm.
If you're single, then it's just as important, because who is going to step in and start making decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself?
Right.
Is it going to be another family member? Is it going to be a close friend? If you are a child, if you are single but in a relationship, it's essential that you have an estate plan in place, because now not only do you have someone that you want to take care of or have them take care of you, but now they don't have the, you know, legal authority to do so if you don't have it in writing. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, first and foremost, women just live longer. So we need to plan for that. The other thing is generally, and I'm generalizing, but the fact that you're a female, you are going to be in charge of taking care of your children. You are going to be in charge of taking care of your parents more than likely. If you have older siblings, it generally falls to, you know, the daughter, the sister, the female in the family, the mother, to take care of those that are dependent and need care down the road. So a female usually is the primary caregiver, you know, in the family. And, you know, 84% of custodial parents are the female. Mm-hmm. So it's essential that, you know, the female has their estate plan in place to take care of all the possible dependents in their lives.
So often I think women, you know, we take care of so many people. It's part of our role as a woman and that, but if we don't make the decisions of who's going to take care of us, if we can't do that, we lose that control. And it's so important to make those decisions ourselves, because otherwise it's up to the court. And, you know, they don't know us, they don't know our situations and that. And it's, you know, you have two choices. We either do it ourselves or the court will determine who makes those decisions for us. So,
you know, that I really love that you put it that way, because it's so true. I had that experience with my own mother, who actually had her estate plan in place. And she didn't own real property. She didn't actually have a house. We lived in apartments my whole entire growing up, and she lived in an apartment until the day she died. And she died when she was 49 years old. She died of cancer. We didn't realize she had cancer until actually after they did the autopsy. I was 26 years old when my mom died, but my mom always had a durable power of attorney. I was always her power of attorney on every bank account she had, and she was a saver. And I was a medical durable. Is that what it's called, Tracy? A medical durable power?
An agent on her medical advanced healthcare directive.
Yes. So I had all authority over her finances, all authority of her medical care, and really of everything. So it was me who closed out her apartment and things like that. I was the beneficiary on all of the insurance policies, and she had a life insurance policy. And so she was always very thoughtful. I mean, I knew these things probably from the time I was I'm talking 11. My mom was a single parent. Yeah. And so I knew what her end of life wishes were at 11 years old. There was no mystery. So I know firsthand how important it is to make sure that your wishes are known. So when my mom died, I knew exactly what to do, and I was able to follow her wishes. And I'll also give you another example. Tracy knows a family, a husband and wife couple that were childless. My husband and I don't have children. And it was Bob and Madeline, who are now both deceased. But they had they had appointed someone to be their power of attorney. And it was me initially, and then I moved out of state. And so then they had to elect someone else. And but they had their plan in place, and they were childless. And a childless couple, you know, I would say really that's something as a woman you have to think about, because you really don't want, you know, strangers making decisions about like the home you're going to be in. You want that to be someone who loves you, who's doing that. So those are a couple of examples that I could think of my own firsthand.
And I think it's important too to remember that there's two distinct situations we talk about when we talk about estate planning. Is incapacity, if we are in a coma, or perhaps Alzheimer's, dementia, and then when we die. And different documents in your estate plan dictate what works when. So like you said, your mom had a durable power of attorney, and that works as long as we're living. You know, for signing tax returns, maybe, you know, getting on a bank account and being able to pay bills and make decisions if you need to go into a nursing home, that kind of thing. And then the will, trust, and that will work after you've passed away. And I think just knowing, you know, statistics with dementia and Alzheimer's now, women live longer, and we also unfortunately live longer with diseases like that as well. And again, you know, it's so important to have a say in who makes those decisions for us. Unfortunately, we've seen it when it's gone really well, and we've seen it when it hasn't gone so well. And again, that control is something that you absolutely have, as long as you take the steps to put that in place.
And then Lakeisha, you brought up a good point. You know, your mom didn't own a home, but she still had assets. And it doesn't matter really how much you have. It is about who is going to have the control and authority over you, you know, when you need that assistance. And so, you know, I hear a lot of people going, you know, I don't have a large estate. I don't have a lot of money. That's not the point. You know, if you have children, you want to know who, you know, if they're minor children, who's going to take care of your children. If you pass away, it doesn't matter how much money you have, how, you know, with the money that you have, you want it in writing how, you know, your children are going to be cared for with that money. It's the same, you know, spouse, elderly parents, all of that has to be in writing, so that if something happens to the main caregiver, usually the female, you know, what is going to happen to that family unit? It could be anywhere from children to, you know, elderly parents. And so when someone comes to see us, we look at that big picture. You know, who is in your life that you either are currently taking care of, that are dependent on you, or in the future, who could that be? So a lot of times we see, you know, the woman, first of all, may stay home for a while with children. So that could affect, you know, how much she has to take care of herself and her family in the future. She could have parents that she's having to stay home and take care of, and have that interruption in her career, that once again, we need to plan for that. So part of the planning is looking at, maybe we're looking at also the parents' estate plan. You know, what do they have in place? Do we need to, I'm not a huge, you know, advocate for everyone needs life insurance, but life insurance sometimes is necessary because if your parents are needing care, and sometimes it's both parents and children, you know, the woman is staying home to take care of both generations. Do we need life insurance on the parents? Because now the daughter is going to have that gap in her own, you know, financial history, so that she needs that gap filled. Or do you have minor children, and so that you know that, you know, I know that maybe I don't have as much as they're going to need for their future care. Do we need to look at life insurance? And that's just one component of looking at, you know, an overall estate plan. But a lot of people just feel like, I don't have a lot, so therefore I don't need to, you know, invest in an estate plan. But you really do. And I know Lisa has a good example that we wanted to share with everyone as to what happens both financially to a family that doesn't have a plan in place. What happens to the wishes of that parent or, you know, spouse or you know, child or so forth when you don't have a plan in place. So I don't know, Lisa, if you want to share that.
So we had a client who, and unfortunately we've seen this more than a couple of times, but a client, actually, well, the kids came in. The mom had she was a single parent, raised her kids on her own. She had, you know, lived a fairly simple life, but she did have a home and, you know, retirement accounts, some bank accounts, and never felt like she had enough to need to go visit, you know, a fancy attorney or anything. So she did some of her own research and did her own will. And one aspect of you know, every family has their own dynamics, and that particular family, there were 3 kids. They were all adults at this point, but one had battled with drug addiction in his whole adult life. And her wishes were, and she had told this to her kids very clearly, and she put it in writing, that her estate would go to just 2 of her children. And those kids promised mom that they would take care of the 3rd child with that money. But she didn't want it to go outright to him, because he would probably fall back into the pattern with extra money in his hands, like, you know, addicts do. And again, this is you know, moms, we're protective of our kids and we do owe a duty to our kids to continue to look out for them as long as we can. So anyhow, she did what she thought was her own will, stated that she passed away. In a nutshell, the will, it was not a will according to California law. And that because it wasn't executed, it wasn't executed properly. And so then it went to intestacy, meaning she died without a will. And in California, if you die without a will, the state decides how it goes. And it would go, in her case, equally among her 3 children outright, because they were adults. So that, again, was not an ideal situation. Her intent was to protect that child, and it didn't happen. In addition to that, it was, you know, it had to go through probate, meaning the kids couldn't touch any of those assets until title was cleared through the probate court. So they couldn't sell the house, they couldn't access bank accounts, and in the meantime, they're having to put her funeral expenses on their credit cards and that. And after about 1.5 years, which is about what a probate runs right now in Southern California, we were able to get it settled and distributed. But the fees alone on that, and she had again, modest home, so some, nothing really significant. But now in Southern California, if you have a home, it's, property values are high. So I think it was right around 900,000
was the total value of the estate.
And another interesting thing just of note is the size of the estate is the gross, not the net. So for example, if you own a home and you have a large mortgage on it, like many of us do in Southern California, the probate court bases fees on the market value, not on the equity that you have in your home.
Wow.
That's significant, especially in a place where our homes have so much value. But
so this case, $900,000 estate, 600,000 of that was the home alone, but it had I believe a $450,000 mortgage on it. But the probate fees, the cost to go through probate, is based on the 600,000. They don't care that you have a $450,000.
Wow.
So when we're looking at the fees for a probate, it's a statutory graduated fee. And so on a $900,000 estate, what are the fees, Lisa?
They were right around $45,000 for the attorney's fees and the executor's fees.
Wow.
So that's significant, especially again when you're looking at what was the real net of her estate. That's about almost 10% of her estate went to fees and costs and that. And again, those are statutory fees. Those are set by the court from the probate code. So in addition to a year and a half of having to deal with attorneys and the court and having, a lot of restriction as far as what could be done because you have to get everything approved through the court. So, we feel very strongly about educating people just how brutal probate can be from a cost standpoint, time, and it's hard on families.
It's emotional.
It is.
She could have spent maybe $5,000 to $10,000, let's say, maybe less.
Or less,
or less, right? Like, $2,500. Let's say $2,500 to $10,000, just depending on whatever she wanted to do.
Right.
And her family wouldn't have had to wait a year and a half. They would have had everything wrapped up probably in about 90 days.
Right.
Right. And everybody and her wishes would have been carried out. The son who's the addict wouldn't have actually had access to that lump sum of money.
Right.
Right. And so, wow, that's a very poignant.
Yeah. It's just
cautionary tale.
One example really. And unfortunately we see a lot of stories that end up finishing nowhere near what the parents wanted.
Wow.
Because it just wasn't done correctly. Or wasn't done at all because maybe they didn't feel comfortable talking about it. Like you mentioned, your mom was always really open with you as far as telling you what documents she had and what you wanted. And that's great because that relieved you of a lot of pressure when you're dealing with the loss of your mother. But, when family dynamics change, when a parent dies and, it makes a hard situation even harder without a good plan in place.
It is that. Thank you for sharing that story. I really appreciate that. And it is the cost, like that $45,000, but also, like you said, the energy that it took to manage that and to have to attend court hearings and to have to, pull documentation and all that stuff. Everyone could have been spared that.
Right. It's frustrating for beneficiaries and heirs because we know that it's a slow court process in Southern California. I don't know about other states. So we're expecting it to take a minimum a year and a half. But the beneficiaries and heirs haven't had this experience. So it's just that frustration that keeps mounting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean we don't have a court hearing for another 3 months? We need to sell the house now. The market is hot now.
Right. And it doesn't matter because we can't.
We need court approval for, X, Y, and Z before you can sell the house.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, in the long run, properly planning ahead saves money, and it is, a way to guarantee that your wishes are going to be carried out.
And another important thing, and I know we've touched on this, but it really does preserve relationships among those remaining family members. And, even in the best situations, we find there's tension. When maybe one child was the one that parent thought could handle managing things and taking care of things. She's real organized in that. So that daughter is saddled with a lot more responsibility. And the other one, the other kids who aren't having to do anything don't understand why she's taking so long.
Mm-hmm.
And really her hands may be tied, and then it creates, these underlying frustrations and tensions. And again, easily avoided if we just deal with it up front.
That kind of reminds me also of another point too. When you were talking earlier about women being the primary caregivers, so many women now are falling into what's considered the sandwich generation, right? They're taking care of children, then they're taking care of their parents. And again, when my mom died, I was 26. I actually had to take off work to take care of her. So for the last, like when it was clear she wasn't getting better, there wasn't a cancer diagnosis yet, but she was just weak. She was just in poor health. I ended up taking a leave of absence from work. And of course it was a leave of absence without pay. And fortunately, my mom was able to contribute to, my care. So I didn't have financial, worries or problems or issues at that time. But if I were a contributing member to my own household, like if I had a spouse or children and the family was dependent upon my income, it really would have put me in a hard position, because I would have wanted to take care of my parent who really, and we didn't know it was going to be her last days, but they were her last days. And I was able to really care for her full time versus, not having the ability to do that. So having one of the things that when you were talking about with life insurance, or I know there are some plans that once you're diagnosed with a terminal illness or a catastrophic illness, sometimes payments to caregivers will kick in.
Right.
So, and that's the little bit of knowledge I have, but there are so many things that going to a knowledgeable advocate for your and your family's best protection of assets. But I almost hate to say just assets, because I love, Lisa, what you said, the preservation of relationships, the making sure that the wishes are taken care of, the not adding the burden and the stress of having to deal with these issues when you're already in mourning and you're grieving, and everybody grieves in a different way. So how you grieve may be different from the way your sibling is grieving. And you know what I mean? It's just, it really is it's a lot.
It is. So we were looking up some statistics before we got on this call with you, and we're wanting to get a little more as far as numbers go with dementia and Alzheimer's, and we know from our practice that it seems like women, are affected by that more often, but are there numbers to back that up? And there were, but some other numbers to just piggyback on what you were saying that I was looking at was 18.4 billion hours of unpaid care goes on annually for taking care of either your elderly parent or a disabled child. So this is not talking about childcare. This is talking about, you know, again, being part of that sandwich generation. Maybe we were taking care of our parents. That translates to $232 billion.
Wow.
And 2/3 of caregivers are women.
Yes.
So, you know, again, that it just goes back to that, you know, extra responsibility that we have as women for the caregiving really on both sides of us. And that's a significant amount. I was shocked by that amount of money and revenue. And then you look at, it's probably a lot more than that that's actually lost, right, by not working. So that's just an amount that would be paid if it was a minimum payment of those 18.4 billion hours. But, you know, a lot of people have careers where they would make more than that. So it's probably translates to even more money than that. But again, I mean, that's, like you said, that's money, but relationships are what is important. And if you're giving up your earnings on top of dealing with perhaps a mess or not being able to do what you need to do, or court proceedings when the person's still living, a conservatorship with the probate court is what happens if somebody is incapacitated and you don't have documents and somebody needs to be appointed by the court. That makes probate look like a picnic. So it's really rough,
right,
and very, very expensive, and usually contentious.
Right. And that's a great point. You know, if you have to go in and get a conservatorship over someone in order to pay their bills or to make, you know, healthcare decisions for them, now every time you're making a decision, you have to go get it, you know, approved by the court.
Wow.
So that is just another component of estate planning. Is we're looking at your estate plan from all angles. You know, while you're alive, what do you need after you've, you know, passed on? What do you need as far as, you know, helping your family or friends or the charities that you want to benefit? So there's just, you need to go to an estate planner that you trust. You know, you find them either by word of mouth or, you know, just, you know, doing some due diligence in your research. But if you go to a good estate planner, they're going to look at all of those things, all those components, to come up with a plan that is going to not only help you take care of yourself when you can't take care of yourself, but all of those around you that are dependent on you.
You know, I want to just piggyback on kind of that idea again, a little bit more about women. And one of the things that I share with my clients all the time that tends to shock them, another statistic, is that a working mother of 2 children is under as much stress as a soldier in active combat.
Wow.
Their cortisol levels test the same. And when I share that with my clients, they're like, I knew I felt that. I didn't know it had a quantifier. I didn't know somebody had tested that, but I felt that. And to me, when then you relate that to heart disease being the #1 killer of women, right? That it kills more women than all forms of cancer combined, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Combined. It is the #1 killer. So when you think about that, and this is not to scare anyone, but there are a couple things, right? I talk about self-care all the time. And, you know, you guys always hear me talk about I need to eat on time, but it's one of those things that not having a good nutritional schedule weakens the heart, right? It is keeping your stress level managed. It is, if you find yourself in a position, so can you imagine if you're raising 2 children and you work, and now you've got a mother or a father who has Alzheimer's or dementia. My husband's mother just recently passed away, and she had dementia. She had 10 children, and she was very well cared for, but it's a lot of work. And the caregiver, the pressure and the stress on caregivers, I mean, there are books on it now, right? It's like caregivers really have to take care of themselves because they become ill because it's just so much pressure. So having this one area of your life taken care of, to me, is it's an indicator of it's an aspect of self-care, right? Making sure this is taken care of. And Tracy, you used the word, one of the two of you earlier, that you invest in estate plan, in an estate plan. And that really is what it is. It's an investment in your mental well-being, your family's mental well-being, the preservation of relationships, and the protection of assets. And then really being able to guarantee that your wishes are taken care of. And so what would you say, because a lot of people might think, well, there's LegalZoom now, and I don't know how this lady that we mentioned with the $900,000 estate that was not really 900,000, but I don't know if she did LegalZoom or if she hand wrote a will, because I know a lot of people will say things like, well, if I handwrite it and seal it in an envelope, it's considered legal. You know, and maybe there are some throwback old stuff like that. I don't know, but why would you tell a person you're really doing yourself a disservice not having a professional certified attorney specifically in estate planning? Because then, you know, there are personal injury attorneys that might tell you, I can throw together a will for you. You know, if you can do it on LegalZoom, I could do the same thing and do it. Why would you say that they absolutely need to find someone they trust with the qualifications that will really help them design an estate plan that actually holds up against the law?
Well, I think we have cleaned up so many messes for online estate plans, or people who have tried to do it themselves.
Okay.
And, you know, will a completely handwritten will hold up? It could. But what happens is people do these hybrids. So they go online and they type up their own will, and they feel that that's a holographic will. Well, a holographic will is something completely in your handwriting, which is more than likely to stand up in court. Not all the time, but more than likely. But if they actually go on and type their own will, for instance, and then just sign it, and it's not witnessed, then it isn't a valid will. So there's all these technicalities, and then you go on to, you know, some of these online LegalZoom or you know, other online providers that can, you know, put a plan together quickly, and, you know, they say it's specific to California, but really they're trying to do it for all 50 states. So is it going to have all of the California law provisions that need to be in there? Not all the time.
Not necessarily.
And if they, you know, if they're going through and answering the questions and they check the wrong box, they don't know the difference if the tax clause is correct or not. They don't know if, you know, they're setting themselves up, or really their beneficiaries, to have to pay more in the end because they checked the wrong box to begin with. So, and the other thing is I think just talking with a professional who does this day in and day out, they don't know the nuances of, well, you also have to look at the family relationships. You know, recently I had a client who tried to do something on their own, and they had 4 children and they felt really bad. I'm going to appoint all 4 of my children as co-trustees of my trust when I die.
To be fair.
To be fair, so that one doesn't feel like, you know, I chose one over the other to manage the trust. Well, they didn't take into consideration, okay, they're treating everyone fairly, but these 4 siblings didn't get along to begin with. Now the parent's dead. That recipe just escalates you know, the discord in the family. And now we have, you know, 4 siblings fighting over the simplest of decisions on a daily basis on trying to get through the administration of this trust. So, you know, if they had gone to an estate planner, the estate planner probably would have asked these questions about relationships and explained that, yeah, you're treating everyone equally, but in the end, is it going to be what is best for the family dynamics?
Right.
It actually causes more discord rather than choosing who is best suited, which child is best suited, or maybe it's not even one of the children. Maybe it's, you know, a family friend or someone, another professional. So it's things like that that people don't take into consideration when they're trying to go at it alone, or they go to, you know, someone who is going to get them in and out of the door really quickly and cheap, but they're not going to sit there and actually ask the questions. So, you know, there's some who have a formula. Okay, you're married, you have 2 children, this is what you need, this is what you're going to get. And they don't ask the questions, well, you know.
And everybody gets the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the experience is so important as well, because again, over the, you know, 20 years we've been practicing together, we learn something every time we see somebody's mistake, or another attorney. Maybe it was a family law attorney who's fantastic at family law, but this isn't their specialty. You know, they go ahead and they're going to do a favor for a friend or whatnot, cleaning that up. You know, we learn from experiences, and so not only is it our little specialty, but we've done it a long time. So we've seen a lot of different things go wrong. So we know what not to do.
Yes.
And I also explain it sometimes, like if you had, you know, a broken arm, let's say, that's complex, you're not going to go to a ear, nose, and throat doctor to have that broken arm, you know, corrected with surgery.
Right.
You know, if you have a problem with your car, you know, yes, I could go on YouTube and get some instructions on how to fix that. Is it the safest thing to do? No. You know, it's better to sometimes just to leave certain things to people where that's their specialty, because it can make them a lot worse. In fact, we are doing a probate right now where the smart lady, she was a school teacher, her sister was an attorney, and she didn't practice estate planning, but she told her verbally what to do. And right now we're in the middle of a long probate that, you know, the judge had a lot of questions on this will and whether or not they're going to admit it. And, you know, again, both really smart ladies in what they do, but unfortunately now it's, you know, not so easy for the person who's left to have to go through court and get it all fixed up. So
it's like that saying, it's a penny wise and a pound foolish, right? It just,
so true.
You know, I remember people asking me when I worked in law offices, you know, can I ask your opinion about this or that? I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. No. You have to talk to a lawyer about that. And you need someone who is specialized in that field. Just because somebody works in a law office, just because they, you know, are an attorney or work somehow in the legal field, maybe they work in the mailroom or they're the receptionist, they are not the person to talk to about your estate plan. So did you have anything on your outline that you wanted to cover additionally, Tracy? Or I was thinking that I'd like to ask you, what would you say are the top 3 things a woman should have as part of her estate plan, or, you know, thoughts that you had along those lines?
Well, I think it's essential that someone has an advanced healthcare directive
Okay.
in place, so that if they become at the point where they can't make medical decisions for themselves, they have their wishes in writing, and they have someone that they have designated as their agent to carry out those wishes
Okay.
for medical decisions. They need a durable power of attorney for financial matters. So once again, if they're if you become incapacitated, you're in a bad car accident, it could be a temporary incapacity, it could be a permanent incapacity. Who can step in and go to the bank, pay your bills, file your tax returns, things like that.
And even communicate with your doctors.
Right.
Because if it's not, if somebody is not listed, the doctors can't even, they can't talk to just anybody.
Right.
Care.
And then the last component is a will or a trust, or both, just to carry out your wishes on your death. So,
and I think the other thing too to remember is sometimes people will think if they do a will, that's their estate plan. In California, it's important to remember that a will still goes through probate. So a will, you might have a perfectly drafted will that that does, it's executed properly. You've set up who you want to get what and how, and it will be carried out that way. But it still has to go through the process of probate in the state of California. So, and that's again those big fees and the delay. So it is important, if that you talk to the right person, again, that estate planning attorney with the experience to analyze what it is that you need. Maybe a will is sufficient, but
that's a good point. And I know your audience is not just California. So, in California, you need a trust. You just need a trust here to avoid probate. But in other states, a will might be sufficient because they don't have that backup in the court system. And maybe a probate is only going to take, 3 to 6 months in another state. So we can't speak to, other states, but in California, we really advocate to have a trust in place, because that is just going to, make it easier for someone to step in and start taking care of your needs.
Yeah.
Or if you've passed away, managing those assets on behalf of the beneficiaries that you want to make sure are taken care of.
And I think a common misconception is a will is simple and a trust is complicated. And people really need to reverse that thinking, because a trust is so much simpler than a will. Again, speaking to California, not other states, but it's important that people realize that a trust really is much more streamlined in every respect than just having a will.
That's interesting. And then one other thing that I wanted to just touch on, as I mentioned earlier in Tracy's bio, that she's the president of the Orange County SPCA. She's passionate about animals and has really devoted an aspect of her life, her personal life, in service to animals. So in her professional life, she's in service to human beings, and then also professional and personal. Actually, you know what? I can't even designate it like that. It's a blend. You are passionate about people and animals. And why I want to bring this up is because you've done a few seminars on helping people who have pets understand that they also can use their estate plan to ensure that they are taking care of their beloved pet that is as much a member of the family as any other member of the family.
They're dependents. They're your dependents. And so, some people may think it's going too far to provide for the care of your pets if you're unable to do so, once again, based on incapacity or death. But it could be a very simple provision in your trust saying, this is who, my animals are going to go to. And that's it. It could be very elaborate. I'm setting up a separate trust for these animals, so that there's, a monetary amount going for their care until they pass away. So and some people will go to me, you know what? My kids are just going to take my animals if something happens to me. And I hate to say it, but when a parent passes away, nothing's ever wrong with the money. The kids can easily take the money, but they don't always easily take the pets.
Yeah.
And so, what's going to happen to that animal? Are they going to be traumatized because their owner passed away, the one who loved them and gave them, care every day? Or is someone going to step up and take them, or are they going to go to a shelter and be traumatized and, I would hate to say this, but most cases euthanized.
Right.
So it's a component of when we meet with someone, hey, do you have pets? Do we want to put something in your trust? And as I said, it can be a sentence or two, or it could be, something very elaborate, like an entire trust. But that is a family member that we look at.
Right. Right. And I mean, I see these, I've never owned an animal or been a pet owner or a pet parent. But I know lots of people who are, and you'll see these things on Facebook, this pet's owner died, this dog or this cat, and the animal has nowhere to go. And so animal rescue people or a neighbor or whomever is looking for a place to pay.
If that pet is lucky, there is someone trying to, help them find a new home. A lot of times the family members will just go, take them to a shelter and be done with them. And what happens at the shelter is, this animal's traumatized. So, the shelters can only take in so many animals. Is this pet adoptable? Sometimes the answer is no, because they're so traumatized.
Right.
So the answer is euthanization, where there's just not room at the shelter, so they euthanize them. So that is a component of what we look at.
Yeah, because the animal's grieving too, right? They're grieving the loss of their beloved owner. So
exactly.
So those are all really wonderful things to think about and consider. I'm a big believer in people protecting themselves, protecting their assets, protecting their mental and emotional well-being, and knowing that this aspect of your life is taken care of and that you've invested in having it taken care of properly. I mean, I just can't stress enough the value add that it is to your life. And a lot of times the way we protect ourselves and our assets really demonstrates kind of how we approach, a lot of things in our lives. So if you're trying to sort of transform the way that you've been doing things in your life, starting with making sure that you are protecting yourself and your loved ones, I think is a good place to start. So I want to thank you both for spending this time with me, for sharing your knowledge, and please let the audience know the best way to contact you if they have any questions or they'd like to work with you to help establish an estate plan.
I think it's probably easy, or the easiest way is to email us. You can email me directly at tracy.roberts@tjr-law.com. That's a mouthful. So it's tracy.roberts@tjr-law.com.
Okay, I'll put it in the post.
Yeah. I know. And Lisa is the same ending, but it's
Lisa.Diaz.
And our phone number is 562-340-6277.
Okay, great. So again, I worked with Tracy 12 years ago. And what I would say, I think, about my experience working with Tracy and seeing her with clients and seeing the way that she crafts protecting the individual, and then their wishes and then their estate and what they want to do, is that she is a heart-centered advocate for anyone who has the pleasure and the privilege of working with her. And I say that wholeheartedly as someone who works in service to individuals being and becoming their highest and their best. Tracy is the best at helping you protect what you want to protect, and she does so from a very heart-centered space. I can also tell you that I have personally referred Tracy to individuals that have had rather large estates, and I was able to refer those people that I care really deeply about for her to take care of them. And so I can personally tell you that I could not recommend Tracy and Lisa. I just can't recommend them highly enough. You will be in really good hands if you're looking to have an estate plan done, and she's great. They're great. So we're going to sign off. Is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We really appreciate it.
Okay, good. So I will see you, in the digital space.
That's right. Okay,
Thanks, Lakeisha.
thanks.
Bye-bye.